Leonard, Benedetto, followed by Michael Vassell, followed by Scott Wilson, so you kind of queue up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Senator Hartley, all the members of the Public Safety and Security Committee, my name is Leonard Benedetto. I've testified in front of you in the past, and some of you might remember me, some of you might not. I'm a Stratford resident, a founding member of Ccdl, an organization with more than 4,000 members and growing daily. I'm also the vice president of the organization, and as our governor put it the other day, I am the fringe of the fringe, and I'm proud of it. Me and my 3,000 other friends who were here on Monday were the fringe of the fringe. I'm here to testify in opposition of SB 505, SB 506, SB 1076, and HB 6251. I'm also here in support of SB 299. Only as one of my colleagues already stated, it doesn't go far enough. Because since this is, I suppose, the quote-unquote gun control hearing, or the first of many, it deals with just strictly firearm issues, rather than just saying, hey, this is a really good system. If we've got it up and running almost already, and it's free, why don't we use it for everything? Makes sense to me. I'd also like to state that when I testified here in January before the Gun Violence Prevention Working Group, I pleaded with that committee that night to please let us have public hearings. So I would like to say thank you very much to all of you for allowing that, because at that point in time, I was fearful that our rights to be actually heard and have a dialogue, which happens here today and has been going on, was going to be waived, and we weren't going to get to be heard because the testifying that I did in January and the thousands of us that did, there was no dialogue. It was everybody got up, had their 3 minutes, and then we were moved on like cattle. Well, I'm glad today that as soon as you folks started asking questions, I really appreciate that. And even if you don't ask me anything, I'm still happy that we're here and we're discussing this. So thank you very much. But I'd also like to say that it's really a shame that the first hearing that we're having happens to deal with nothing but guns on the docket. And I'm only here discussing 4 bills that I don't like and 69 pages of documents I had to sift through to write my testimony. 59 of them from 1076. Please, folks, do you really want to be here for like the rest of your eternity? It's a 59-page bill. It's just one of them, and there's 11 on the docket today. I don't know how to break that down, except I know that many people here did already very eloquently and did a wonderful job picking out certain pieces. I don't know if I can do that great of a job, so I just hit a couple points or 1 or 2 points in that will make a difference to me personally. I guess I should continue with what I've actually written and get to SB 505, an act concerning the minimum age to purchase a rifle or other long gun. All the people have already stated that. We have service men and women. They sign up at 18, they do 2 years, they come home. I'm going to run out of time, darn it. They come home, and you're not allowing them to use a rifle or buy a rifle after they just carried one to protect themselves and their friends and their colleagues for 2 years, and they're proficient with them, but yet we're not going to allow them to do that anymore. SB 506, a little problem with that is calling for the listing of the manufacturer's numbers on line 38. I'll be very brief. Line 38, you should know this, that in line 38, you are stating that you want the manufacturer's name, the model, the serial number. I've already testified in front of this committee, I believe 2 years ago, on, I believe it was 1094, but I'm not positive, maybe it was a different bill, 1094, about the registration of long guns. And I've already stated, I and many of us here have guns that were made after before 1968 that are modern rifles that do not have serial numbers. Yet you're calling for a serial number, which there's no way to technically register that. And I'll be just closed right now, if I may. I won't even mention the other because you have it all written. In closing, not one thing in any of these bills today will stop the next slaughter of innocent people from a crazed madman. I was under the impression when this all started that The reason we were having these discussions on guns and all that was to make our people safer. But yet none of these bills do anything to make anybody safer or stop the next madman. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Leonard. Questions, Senator Woodcutt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Len, thanks for your testimony, and thank you for coming back again to the Capitol. I know you were here when we had the working group, but I guess my question to you is, you stated that none of these bills that are before us today will do anything to combat gun violence. And as you know, the working group on the Gun Safety Task Force brought up 2 different proposals, and there were many of them that had a consensus. Maybe not worded exactly the same, but there was a consensus. Is it your opinion that this legislature can adopt nothing as far as under the auspices of guns go will affect change or to the betterment, or there are issues out there that we can adopt as a legislature that's good public policy and doesn't infringe upon folks' Second Amendment rights?
I think for good public policy, attacking the honest gun owners, which, by the way, the crazed madman's mother was. Now, how she stored her weapons, a lot of people want to say, well, she's kept them in a closet. But as people have already asked and stated here today, the report's not out. I have no idea if she had them in a safe, if he picked the lock to the safe, or if being a fellow shooter with his mother, he had the combination. So there's a chance that that safe was, those things were locked up. I think that is the best way to keep guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them, is by keeping them locked up. I know I've been a gun owner for many years, and I've got a safe that's packed, and that's the way it stays. They're locked up unless I have them on me. Today I am unarmed, so if anybody wants to mug me on the way home, today's your day to do it, because when I'm here, I cannot be armed.